Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Corinne Boyer. Corinne is a folk herbalist, teacher, and writer with a passion for traditions surrounding plants and folk magic. She's been studying and working with plants since 1998. Corinne has taught community herb classes since 2005 and teaches weekly classes out of her home with a focus on wild crafting, medicine making, plant lore, folk medicine, and traditional magic. She has been published in various journals with articles about plant lore and history. Corinne created a free quarterly herbal newsletter called The Gathering Basket, which was distributed to her local community from 2012 to 2017. She's got 3 books out. She lives up in the Pacific Northwest and where it's nice and wet, right? Welcome to the show, Corinne.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome, Corinne. I think it's worth pointing out that you have, is it a master's in biology?
No, bachelor's of science.
Yeah, I think that's worth pointing out because it actually roots your your work grounds it down into real scientific inquiry and the know-how of these things. So I think
I
that's
did have it
also
in my first take at the bio, but I think I swiped this off your publisher. So it was better work.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It feels like it was a long time ago.
That's one of the things that we talk about here too, is like the different lives we live within this one alone.
Mm-hmm.
How separate they can all seem. It's where they're threaded together, but the you of 20 years ago is not the you now. And that's just always an interesting tale. But I like that you don't always throw that around, by the way. And but it's really great that you have that backing you up. So I just wanted to acknowledge it.
Oh, thank you.
So let's get into it. Tell us about young little Corinne. Did I say that right again? I said it wrong, didn't I?
No, you said it right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Little Corinne in the world, what inspired you? Your earliest memories that inspired you or that stick out, that just kind of pop out when you think back?
Well, being from Michigan, I was really lucky to be pretty close to nature, and my family, we moved around quite a bit, but we always had my grandmother's farm is a huge thing when you ask what inspires, me from an early age. So we were blessed enough to have a family farm from, I think, 1850 that had been in our family until 14 years ago. It was sold. But it was something about that place. First of all, it was like the safest place in the world. It was down to 9 acres by the time I was going there, but of course, originally was 160. And it had the big old 5-bedroom farmhouse and the field stone foundation with the dirt floors and the cellar doors. And these
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it was incredible, and a huge 3-story barn that had no animals in it, and it was abandoned at that point. The barn, they weren't farming anymore. They had sold off all the land. But my grandma and her sister, so my great aunt, they lived there in 2 like small little downstairs apartments. But the cool thing is they left the upstairs completely untouched. So it was packed full of antiques and pictures and weird things. So I used to, and hand painted wallpaper. So I'd go up there and just pile through these boxes, look at diaries and journals and old keys and pipes. And it really influenced me in terms of my love of old things, which I've always had. I feel like even when I was a little girl, I was always loved to go to the antique stores and just loved old things and collect it. I was always a collector of sorts. So, but that experience being there and being able to play alone and just go off into the forest and have like these strange otherworldly experiences where I feel like it's almost, 9 acres, if you understand acreage, it's not a ton, but it's enough to get kind of lost. But for some reason, the way of that land throughout the seasons, I'd go there every 2 or 3 months. My mom and my brother and I would go visit my grandma every 2 or 3 months, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending, but usually pretty regularly. And the lay of that land, it would get disorienting. Sometimes I would find myself in a place and I could never get back to that place later. And so there's just some really profound experiences I had, and actually one just popped in my mind, and I'll share real quick and move on from that. But it had a huge impact on me, and I didn't even think about it until later in terms of the symbolism. But I remember one time, usually my brother and I, played together a lot. He was 18 months younger than me, but he was off doing something, and I was playing by myself in front of grandma's house. No one was around, and I caught a frog, and I was maybe 10 years old. And I decided, and I have no idea why, but I decided to bury it alive. I wanted to bury it, and I like went through this solemn ritual of the burial of this frog and these stones, and I actually had a funeral for it and picked flowers for it. I did this whole thing and cried. Like it was so interesting. And then 2 weeks later we came back and I wanted the bones. So I looked for the bones and I couldn't find them. But that I thought about that from time to time, and not till like way, way later thought about the symbolism of that, which is really interesting. So that's like a pretty early memory that is kind of stands out from the rest, like those crystal clear dreams do, as you guys know. So
I love that. I had I had an early experience like that with a bird that I did this whole elaborate
mm,
thing. Except for my brother and his friends came in and like
oh,
destroyed the whole thing. I was so upset by it.
that's such a bummer.
He was a terror. What part of Michigan are you from?
Kind of all over, but I spent the most time in um,
Well, that particular house, your granny's.
oh, Greenville. So that's about 45 minutes outside of Grand Rapids. And that's where I spent a lot of time in the Holland, Grand Rapids area. So, but I also lived up in Traverse City for years and in parts of Detroit. Both my parents are from the Detroit area. And so my grandparents were over there, my dad's side in a tiny town called
Yeah.
Holly. And so, yeah, Greenville's outside of, yeah, about 45 minutes outside of Grand Rapids, which Grand Rapids is big.
Yes, it is.
Hmm.
I will always love Michigan. Not just
Yeah.
because I married a man from Michigan at one point, and I didn't see Michigan until actually I married him.
Oh,
Like I
yeah.
didn't get to really experience how witchy the wood is there. There is something special going on, especially in the
Absolutely.
UP.
Oh,
The
yeah. The
UP
UP
is
is not even Michigan. UP is something else.
incredible.
It's
That's where he was from, and
oh
so
my god.
he's a
We
Uper.
yeah, no, that's a whole 'nother thing. The UP used to scare the shit out of me. I've only been up there a few times. It's not Michigan. It should be called something else. It's not the
It
same.
is
They
like
have their own.
it's an aisle. Yeah,
They have their own accents even.
Oh,
they do.
absolutely. I mean,
They do.
they held on to the culture longer. The immigrants that went there, and I mean, they held on to the culture much longer than some of the other parts. Makes sense, and it's so northern. It's so
Yes.
cold and snowy. There's so much more, I mean, just hardship wise, so there's a
And there's
lot.
still a lot of folklore up there.
Yes, there's a really cool book called Blood Stoppers and Bear Walkers. It's all about the Upper Peninsula folklore.
Yes, I'm familiar with it.
Oh yeah, cool.
That's one place in the world I would move to, except I wouldn't out of respect for my ex-husband's family because those
Mhm.
families are all so close knit.
Oh yeah.
But it holds such a magical place, and I have been truly afraid in the wood up there. Like
Oh yes.
I think you talked about this with Gordon about some natural places you should respect I don't know if it was you, specific spirits, like you're not wanted in some
Oh
areas.
yeah. No, that was. Yeah,
Yeah,
that are hostile and adversarial. Yeah.
yeah, I felt that in the UP.
Yeah.
What,
It's
what about cryptids?
What's that?
What about cryptids? Any, Mothman, Dogman, Wolfman, Bigfoot?
the hodunk up there.
I don't know. I don't know if there's any local lore cryptids up there other than Bigfoot.
Well, not really where I was. It's interesting. Because I was kind of central western, more mostly. I mean, the Traverse City are getting up north for sure, and I did live up north for some years when I was young, but don't remember it as well. So I've thought about this. I've looked into some of the folklore um, down south, and it's there was a lot of ghost stories growing up. We had a ton of ghost stories, and like a lot of spooky haunted places, but not a lot. I mean, out here where I'm at in Washington, there's a ton of Bigfoot lore,
Yes.
but not. I don't remember much from Michigan, but I can say we were I guess from fourth grade till I was 18, we were like literally 1 mile from Lake Michigan, really close, and the land. there in general. It is such a strange place. I think all of Michigan is strange, being surrounded by water on three sides, but the native presence is very strong in a very different way than it is out here, because it's strong here too, in a different way. But it's I don't know. There is a sense of other out there that is helpable, and I feel blessed to have been touched by that, certainly. And it's always in my heart. I don't go back home very often, but it's always with me.
Yeah, it's unique. It's definitely, I've been all over, and it is unique.
It is.
Did you as far as like pop culture, because I know you had the close connection with nature, and of course knowing the areas and stuff. What about pop culture? Anything stick out, like cartoons or movies from when you were really young, or I don't know, even clothing, anything that kind of sticks
Hmm.
out when you think to your young self?
Well, a couple things. Well, I was really into singing, and I still am. I thought I was going to be a singer from the age of 3 until I was 15. My dad was a recording producer and engineer, and so I had this. I loved to sing, so certainly I was into pop music. Madonna, and like especially female vocalists, a lot of things like that. So I was very musical. I guess with singing, it's my one. I feel like all of us have a birth given gift, and it was my one gift that I didn't have to work really hard for. Everything else I had to work very hard for, but singing came very natural to me. So I feel like most of us, I think all of us have something like that, but everything else has been a lot more challenging. But singing, yeah, it was always just there. So that I feel like I was certainly pop culture stuff. But in terms of influences that have lasted, actually one of the my son would tease me so badly for this. My son's 15, and I made him watch this movie when he was 10, and he was like, "Mom." So do you guys remember Watcher in the Woods?
I
Oh
remember it. I never
man.
saw it.
It's a Disney movie. You remember there was a time in the
I
80s
know
and
if it's Disney, I may have seen it.
yeah, and you remember there was a time where Disney went through a creepy phase. I mean, Something Wicked This Way Comes, for example.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
That, like there's some creepy stuff. But anyway, Watcher in the Woods, it was one of Betty Davis's.
I do remember it. Oh, I needed the Betty Davis
Yes.
reference.
Yes, and it's totally like B grade in terms of budget, and
It's
it,
like one of her last films.
right. But it wasn't a high budget film, but it scared me so intensely, and it really had an effect on me. And honestly, to this day, it still scares me. Which so my son would laugh at me. We watched it. I like bought the DVD or whatever when he was 10, and we watched it. And he was like, "Mom, are you kidding me? This is so dumb." And I'm like, "Oh my god, this is like such a big deal." But it's very. It has a lot to do with the unseen and the invisible, and like other worlds, and some haunting and old ruins in the forest, and just certain
Yes.
things, certain archetypal symbols that have been really important to me. So I do think that one was huge in terms of influence. When I saw it, it's
I
kind of
have a big love for that type, the B horror in that
yeah,
period. And for one thing, they make you work your imagination. They don't give it to you.
absolutely right.
It's a whole different scene. That's why people today aren't used to it. Is everything's given to them, and it's so
Right.
easy with our technology too.
Yeah,
So we had to work.
indeed.
We were our imagination was filling in these images that are coming at us. And
Oh
like
yeah.
the original Haunting the Hill House, you never saw any monster, you never saw anything. It was all implied.
Mm,
I
yeah.
mean, that's what made that so terrifying. And that Bette Davis film, yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that. So I've written it down. I'm gonna revisit that. I love it so
Check it
much.
out. Yeah.
That's so great. How were you as a so back to young you, what was your dream life back, if you can recall back then?
So I do remember a few really prominent dreams. Of course, they were nightmares, but one of my earliest dreams that I have had, I was 5, and I very distinctly remember the Wicked Witch of the West chasing me through this maze, and it was terrifying, but I'll never forget it. So Wizard of Oz is is another favorite. Um,
Oh yeah, that's of course.
yeah.
Every
So
year I looked forward to that because they'd show it yearly.
Yeah, it's a classic. So that dream sticks out, and there are a few. There was another one about my family's farm being kind of the family being like locked inside. There was like a barricade. There was like a war going on from a long time ago. That I remember that one really well. But I don't feel like I really got into dreams till I was a teenager.
Do you remember the details of the Wicked Witch one?
I can see it in my mind. I can see it was like a labyrinth, and I was walking to school in the fog. I was in kindergarten or whatever, and all of a sudden it turned into this labyrinth, and it was all black, and I had to get through this labyrinth, and I knew she was chasing me, and I could see her like through the wall, like somehow knew where she was and that she was after me. That's all I remember, but it was very very vivid.
That's intense. Saint Margaret
Yeah,
Hamilton.
yeah, yeah,
Which Saint Margaret Hamilton?
yeah,
Oh yeah, I mean that she's the icon,
yeah.
especially of, anything
Yes,
pre like 1990 before.
indeed. Yeah, she is.
And that's also very pop culture. I like your influences here. Your young influences are all kind of spooky, and witchy.
Yeah, I was always fascinated by those particular characters, and I think I said this in maybe the maybe not Rune Soup, but maybe Down at the Crossroads, where I was lucky enough to have a great uncle who lived at my grandma's farm with my great aunt, and he would read us fairy tales and stories when we'd go visit because he was English. So
Hmm.
I had a huge love of Hansel and Gretel in particular, and Baba Yaga because of the witch
Yes.
figures. And so I remember, and Rapunzel and Snow White. Those were, and the Disney movies that went with them. I loved the fairy tales, and whatever media went with them. So those were huge influences too. Always, like, I was actually talking about this recently in a class. We were talking about. I had people. It was like question of the night or something. It was the evening class, and I had some people describe their dream apothecary. Like, what is, like, when you think about the apothecary, what is that? What does that mean? Describe what that is. And so I kind of let people go off on this tangent, and it was really cool to think about. After that conversation, I was really like, gosh, what influenced me in terms of my dream apothecary, and my, like, the witch's cupboard full of you know dried toads and crow feathers and mandrake root or whatever, the classic archetypal.
Oh yeah.
So I had to, I don't know, and I was digging around for that and trying to figure that out. And it was fun to hear their reference points for that, and they weren't the same. I didn't, a lot of that, yeah, it wasn't the same for me, but it was interesting.
Did you this is just funny. I remember this from the Midwest, but I don't know if it was national or not. Swingali in the 80s.
Hmm.
Svengoolie.
Svengoolie. He
From
would do horror.
Burrowing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I know he was broadcasting around the Chicago
His
area.
name's
Hmm.
Rich. I met him once. I forget what his name is. But
Yeah, he would do like Saturday night horror, old horror.
Okay.
Creature
Yeah.
Features. Remember Creature Features on WGN, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Not really.
Oh, I loved all that. Okay, so you mentioned something interesting though already about the dreams. So you had a lot of nightmares as a very young person.
Well, those are the ones I remember now. I don't, in terms of what sticks out,
Yeah,
certainly those are
yeah.
easier to recall.
Did you at that point when you were still young, when we're talking early here, did you experience anything that went along with those kinds of experiences like sleep paralysis?
Never had that. Never did sleepwalking either.
And what about some people speak of this, some people add this into the paralysis experience, some people don't. It's that it's this pre-state. I can't remember the technical term they have for it now, but it's where you're basically your energetic field is shrinking and getting bigger or spinning, and you feel like you might drop low or go high. It's like you're basically in your body, but at the same time your energy is expanding and contracting.
Not that I can recall. And another interesting thing on that note, in terms of kind of some of these, I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, so go ahead and
Oh no,
continue.
no, no. That was my question with the example.
Yeah, no, not that I can recall. And it's interesting too because I've only had a few dreams of flying. You know how a lot of people have a lot of flying dreams? I don't. Very
Mhm.
few, like literally two my whole life.
When will you tell us about them? How, like, in the particulars before, if you have them at hand, if you recall details. But how were you flying? Were you in a bubble? Were your hands out like Superman?
Yeah, like super person. Yeah,
Super
totally.
person. Yeah. You had that sense. I've never had that. I'm always
Really?
floating.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yes.
Interesting. I
And
never considered floating as a possibility. That's a good idea.
and it all started with like having like the inner tubes you play in water with, the little children's ones,
Yeah.
um, around my waist. And that's the very first time as I was with a bunch of people. I'm like, look, I can do this. And I was like bobbling around. And that turned into
Wow.
eventually kind of a Galinda experience where
That's super cool.
I move around in my bubble.
Love
I
it.
have a little synchro for you here.
Ooh, bring it, Jerry.
Apparently, Lifetime remade Watcher in the Woods last year as a TV movie.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Mhm.
Oh, I mean, maybe, oh, yes. Oh, gosh.
Got to
Well,
check that out.
I'm definitely gonna check that
Yeah,
out.
there
Like,
you go.
I guarantee it's not going to be as good, but
Might be better.
no, it won't be. Oh,
actually,
and oh, go ahead.
no, carry on.
I was just gonna say on that note, if you don't ever watch any of the alternative endings, I'm just gonna say that there's two other alternative endings. Like when you get the DVD, don't do it. Don't do it. The curiosity may be strong. Just abstain. Trust.
Okay.
They're so horrible. They ruin the entire thing, and then you're just like this like there's a missing part of my soul now. Don't do it. So
No,
anyway,
okay.
Yeah,
Noted.
this one's got Angelica Houston.
Ooh, that's a draw for me. I love Angelica.
well, we'll see. Probably a
That's
totally different. That's not a bad thing.
yeah.
It
Well,
came
and
out
Angelica's quality.
came
Oh,
out
for
on
sure.
came out on DVD on 9/11, 2018.
Wow.
That's interesting.
I know.
Thank you. I never would have looked for that or found it.
Oh man, that is interesting. Okay, so and then okay, so early background stuff. Were you brought up around religion at all?
Yeah, I was. My actual like immediate parents, my parents were divorced and I was really close to both of them. I didn't see my dad as much, but neither one of them were particularly religious. Both of their families extremely so, but my mother married a man who was Christian reformed, the least exciting of all of it you could ever imagine. So we were forced to go to church from about the age of 5 to 14. Um, so that was not very fun.
Yeah. I always say this, like, I didn't get any of that, but as I got older, I really enjoy the rituals that Catholics do and some of
Yeah.
those more
I wish I would
paganistic
have had
things.
that experience for
Yeah.
certain. A lot of my close friends were brought up Catholic, and there's a lot of value there, I think.
Yeah. Oh,
But
there's just beauty alone, just the beauty alone.
oh, absolutely. But the
Like,
Christian reformed is really quite miserable.
yeah. Like, is there no singing or anything?
Oh no, there's singing and there's some pretty stained glass, but no, just the lack of some of the sacred that would have been there in the older times is gone. And
Yeah.
actually I have a memory of being in seventh grade and my best friend, she was like a goody two shoes. She would laugh if I said this, we're still friends. And I was always the troublemaker who wanted to have a mystery or find buried treasure, find some dead body or whatever. So that was me. And so we stole away from the youth group on my badgering, and we had our own ritual in the cathedral with holy water and candles at night.
Oh my God. You
Yeah.
are awesome.
It
I
was
love you.
crazy. We got caught and totally got in trouble. I just wanted to experience it without the congregation and the pastor, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I love this. What rising sign are you?
Aries.
Okay, that's making sense to me there. We share your sun?
Yeah, Capricorn.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
the rising to me is the most important, I think. It's how we view you. Um, okay, so let's move forward a little. So that's a good backdrop. So as you get older, what was your experience coming into with you? I want to go like coming into more of the awareness of dreaming? When did you start realizing, and this could be even last year, of course I know it's not, but when did
Sure.
you start realizing that dreams are possibly something else? There's something else going on there.
Definitely in my teenage years. I remember, I was exposed to some alternative new agey stuff, and I mean, yeah, most of it was kind of just what was available. Pretty young, like seventh, eighth grade. I got into astrology and tarot, which I'm not saying that's new agey, but I thankfully I got into that, and started realizing, I started keeping a dream journal right around probably 14, and realized how important that was for recall. And so definitely teenage years started realizing, oh yeah, this is really important, and I knew I wanted to incorporate it as a practice, and ever since then I have. I've really it's a huge part of my life, actually.
What was your first tarot deck?
Hanson Roberts.
Interesting.
I still have it. I was gifted it from my uncle in 7th grade.
They say that the magical gifts are more magical when they're gifts. The magical
Absolutely.
tools.
Yeah.
I mean, that's old folk stuff. And so what was the first book that was, I remember these days too. So I also remember
Yeah.
what was on the shelves. So there was Scott Cunningham when no one else was really around.
Right.
And thankfully, Scott put out some great work when nothing else was available.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what was your first couple witchy books you got that maybe in herbalism or witchcraft or all that?
Well, interestingly, I remember being a teenager and going to there was a couple new age shops. One was in Grand Rapids and one was in Saugatuck, which was both they're both near Holland where I live. And so there were there weren't I got a I yeah, I think I had earth, air, fire, water or whatever,
Yes.
I didn't resonate a ton. I did some stuff, because you try stuff out.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't do a ton with that. I I was pretty into ghost stories, so there were different, scholastic books on ghosts and different ghost stories, and I really liked those. Um, it's interesting a lot. Actually, going back a little farther, I mean, it sounds silly, but there was a time frame where I was really obsessed with, like,
That's my end.
there was a book called Wait Till Helen Comes, and this was earlier in like 4th grade that had a huge impact on me about a little girl ghost and haunting. And then there was also a movie called Mystery Mansion. I don't know if you watched that. That's like D grade.
I
But
totally remember that.
uh-huh. So like the ghost thing, I feel like that was more of an influence for me. And then the kind of witchy stuff, I really one experience that happened that was super strange. My mom had, in our house we had like the bookshelf, big bookshelf on the living room wall, and I looked at it a million times. I knew all the books there, and I was standing there, and I was probably 15, and I noticed this little book, and it was Raymond Buckland's Gypsy Love Magic,
I
and I was like,
remember
what?
that too.
I was like, what is this doing here? My mom's not into that at all, and she wasn't religious, but she wasn't into that, and so I felt like it was this gift for me that the universe had plopped there, and I took it, and I used that for a while for sure. And years later, like I never talked to her about it or anything, and maybe 15 years later, I asked her about it because I remembered, and she said, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." She didn't know. She didn't put it there. So how did that get there? I'll
Oh,
never know.
wow. Providence.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that one's cool. But from my early 20s when I wasn't super impressed with what I was finding, and I was getting into books on herbalism, definitely by my late teens, and alternative body care, and making body care products, this and that. But I really love Valerie Worth's books, both of them. Still, they're
Yes.
hugely incredible. They're incredible. So A Crone's Book of Words, I was exposed to that when I was 21.
And the
Uh,
Crohn's Book of Wisdom.
yes, yes, they're incredible. I mean, that's some.
I just gave those away, by the way. I gave a box of 100 books from the 80s that I had.
Wow, that was a part
Yeah.
of it, huh?
Yeah. Yes, that was in there. Earth Magic. That was
Oh yeah.
that, all those, all the Scott Cunningham stuff and the Raymond Buckland. I have so many books, including yours, that are now trump that. But those two
Sure.
books from Valerie Worth were my favorites because they're so folky.
They are. They are. There's so she channeled something. I mean, there's no doubt. I just love she was a poet also.
Yeah.
So and I love that there was like an 18-year gap between the books when she wrote them. They were just really special. So I feel like those were probably my favorites if you're thinking
Do you
about.
still have them?
Oh yeah.
It's funny. Well, the reason why, and I only just did it recently, it was like 2 years ago, I got through this purging phase. I've had like 100 moves. I have an estate of antiques. I travel with like a gypsy. And I'm like, I have got to lighten the load.
Yeah.
And the books were the easiest thing to let go of outside of antiques,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I love all these influences.
Yeah.
Um, did
Interesting.
so in that period, I love Holland. I dated a guy from Holland.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
Tom Noonan.
Hmm.
He was, and it was in. I mean, yeah, it was. He worked at the bread store there, I think.
Oh.
Um, I can't remember. So long ago. It was late '80s.
Oh.
Um. Anyway, so he lives up here by us, by the way, in Bellingham.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's a couple Holland people up here that I know.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
from
That's
Holland. I mean, it's amazing because it's such a little, it's just, it's, I don't know, it seems strange. But
yeah.
okay, so in this period when you're 14, you were doing the dream journal. Was this a natural thing you decided to do, was start recording your dreams? What prompted that?
You know, I, I don't remember. I think my uncle, and he's been like a lifetime. He's been interested in spirituality, alternative spirituality for his whole life. He's been a meditator, and he got me into the tarot cards. But I think he suggested it. Honestly, that's what I remember vaguely. And I just thought it was a good idea. And it really made a difference in
So
remembering. Mhm.
yeah, that's what I want to talk about. So when you started journaling, how did it change your experience of dreaming?
I remember at first doing the thing where you literally write down everything because,
Oh my
you know,
goodness.
right. No way do I do that anymore. But I used to, it's like you're building that muscle, right? So it really helped the recall and it helped me take the time that I wouldn't have taken if I wasn't doing that practice. As hard as it is, it's really hard to actually do that. When you're waking up in the morning, you got to take 10 or 15 extra minutes, sometimes 20, and sit there and kind of do it before it slips away. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, I was blessed enough. She's a huge heroine of mine, but I was blessed enough to do a 5-day training with her 4 years ago, and she talked about dreams. I don't know if you've read her work, Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Oh yeah, of course
Yeah,
I'm familiar
yeah,
with. I
yeah.
have that, but that's one of the books that made the box too.
Oh yeah, that's one of the books
Yes,
that you
that
gave
got
away.
given away. Yeah.
Oh heaven.
I
Yeah,
know.
no, it's a big book. But yeah, she calls it Pulling a Dream Back by Hale, and that makes a lot of sense where you're like, so I feel like the recording of dreams, it opens up another channel that you can't get from just thought alone because it just all of a sudden there's more available that you're not going to remember unless you're doing this other thing with this other part of your brain. So it really helped with the recall.
When you're so okay, in this too, in this and this doesn't have to relate to any time period unless there have been changes. So in the landscape of dreaming for you, in the architecture of dreaming, how do you experience it? And I'm looking for all the tactile stuff too: smell, scent, taste, familiar buildings, familiar places, all that, color.
Hmm. Well, I feel what helps me make sense of my dream world is I assign my dreams to kind of a spectrum. Okay, so it's like a loose spectrum, but it's a spectrum nonetheless. So there's different qualities of different kinds of dreams because they're not all the same, right? So what helps me first, I'll kind of lay out the parameters of how I think about them, and then it'll make more. I think it'll answer your question. I hope so. The first part of the spectrum is like kind of the brain backwash dreams, like literally. like rat dreams, as they're called. So dreams that don't have a lot of meaning, that there's a muddiness, there's a muddy quality to them. They don't necessarily have a start or an end, and they're seemingly mundane. So I feel like those dreams often happen in the earliest part of the night where you almost can't really recall them. I wake up numerous times in the night for various reasons, and so that helps with dream recall, as you guys know. So the early cycles of the night, it almost just seems like this extremely elusive process. Once in a while, I have something tangible from that time period, which I take to be pretty significant if I do, but generally speaking, I don't. So it's like those rat dreams, or even the mundane dreams where you're just like, yeah, you're like at work basically. You're doing things that don't seem to mean much, and then we kind of go along the spectrum some more, and then we start to get dreams with a storyline that have more cohesion, that have a greater significance. And so these dreams, kind of like the mid grade, I'll call them mid grade dreams. I mean, not to rate things, but that's how we make sense of things. At least it helps me. So the mid grade dreams, these are like, and these I'll have usually a couple times a week, sometimes 3, 4 times a week, where it's almost like insight into my life, that these kind of dreams will show me things that I don't necessarily want to see. So these kind of dreams will give me some sort of insight. For example, being angry at somebody when I'm not dealing with it in my real life, it'll be like the dream will show me like I'm beating this person up, or whatever. Uh, or like, if I feel like I'm getting taken advantage of by somebody, I'll have a dream that makes it very clear how I actually feel, and I'm not consciously expressing that to myself because maybe I think I shouldn't feel that way in real life. I'm just giving you an example. So these kind of mid-grade dreams, they're like they're instructive and they're helpful and they're illuminating. They're not necessarily prophetic though, or what I call, I don't have a better word for it, but like medicine dreams, which I'll get to. It's like at the farthest end of the spectrum. So anyway, these kind of mid-grade dreams, there's a storyline. It's I have dreams about a lot of people, especially students and family and friends, a ton, like more than I would like to. But I do. I have a lot of people dreams. So then from there, then it's like significant, kind of towards the other end of the spectrum is like significant, what I call kind of medicine dreams, or I mean spirit dreams. It sounds really new agey. I don't have a better term to fit, but those are the dreams where you're getting direct transmissions, and it's way outside of the mundane. There's the quality to those dreams is like crystal clear. The feelings in those dreams are so much more enhanced, and there's something else that's happening there that's really profound. Those are like maybe once a month, and then there's like the big, like once or twice a year, maybe twice a year, like holy shit, life-changing dream. And those are really rare, but those are like unforgettable in their like start to finish, in their quality, in the archetypal symbolism and all that they mean. So anyway, that's kind of how I think of them on a spectrum. And I feel like the more they leave the mundane realm, the more enhanced and like clear that they get in some level, and the more emotional. One thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is how dreams come with their own memories. There's a whole nother set of memories in your dreams. That's why, in some ways, for me, I am amazed how hard some things are to articulate. Like maybe it's an object in a dream, or a place, or a person, or an interaction, right? And like articulating it is, it's amazing how complex it is, because there's like all these other memories and feelings that aren't even part of our conscious life. Anyway, that's a long answer, but I hope that answered your question a little bit.
That's a common report back from people who've done DMT or ayahuasca.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
I've never done either.
They can't express what they experienced because it had that emotional component.
That totally makes sense. Yeah.
It's also and for me there's familiar architecture, and there is a whole different set of I like how you call it, I wrote it down as memory within dreams. But when I get into certain places where I know like this is my place, even though it's changed or shifted,
Yeah.
it comes with this whole background. Like when I wake up here and I have this whole background here, I'm like at this cottage and I'm attached to these things and I'm doing this. It comes with this whole set of stuff. And so within the dream, I find myself in these surroundings too, although they can shift. I wake up here and I do expect, like here, like in waking life, I wake up and there's this expectation that my cottage is going to look the same, that my same old ducks are going to be the same old ducks, and all that, like the stability factor, I
Yeah.
guess. So within the dream, it's things can shift and yet it's the same feeling. So it doesn't matter that it's a different looking house. It's the
Oh,
same.
totally. Yeah.
Is that also part of what you're talking about with the memories within them?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, well, certainly, if we dream about, how we've all had the experience of dreaming about a person that looks completely different, feels different, but is another person that we know very close, like they didn't look like
Yes.
so and so, but they were, or yeah, like the house that doesn't look like our house, but it was. And
Yeah.
like, there's that, but then there's certain dreamscapes that almost have a life happening on their own where, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like there's a whole nother lifetime and life story that you're touching into that can't be known. I just had this dream pop back into my head of like, uh, this was years ago. I didn't. It's funny. I was just going over some of my dream journals before we talked, but this wasn't even in there. But it was somewhere out east, you know, way out east, which I've never been east. I've never been to like Massachusetts or Pennsylvania. I've always wanted to go, but it was out there and it was like a long time ago. It was like 150, 200 years ago or whatever. And I was in this valley with these stones and I was looking for red agates. And there was a man, this particular man that I knew in my dream, tall, red-headed man. And it was just like the feeling of it, like some of those dreams that I'm sure I wrote it down and there's more to it, but I just had a glimpse of it. But it's like, it is like another lifetime that you're touching into. So I feel like that's where it's just like, holy shit, so incredible.
The red agate, looking for the red agate is intriguing. Do you remember the details of why?
No, but I know where it's written down. I don't. I remember there was something about a small log cabin, and this person and I, whoever he was, we were married, and yeah, I don't remember what we were doing with the stones.
That's intriguing though. And as you know, agate's a very powerful
Yeah.
stone. It's very underrated. Most people are like,
Oh
"Eh,
yeah.
give me the amethyst," or
Right. Oh
I'm like, "Give me the bloodstone and agate." Uh,
yeah.
Um, so okay, and I wrote down here, so the people in dreams, could you elaborate on that and the different ways you experience people? And so this can include people you know from your waking life, and then others.
Yeah. So it's funny that there are certain friends of mine I have that I've had for years that maybe I don't see them very often, but I dream about them more than I see them. So I'll dream about them like every 3 months. I have dream about certain friends of mine that are couples and I go to their farm and we do these things. It's kind of funny. And I'm not even thinking about them as much as I dream about them. So, but in terms of, yeah, I do. I mean, I do dream about a lot about students and I dream about my children a lot and my family a lot. And I dream about the dead quite a bit. So my beloved dead come to me regularly. Sometimes there's bigger gaps than others. So that's big. And
Could you give us an example of the dead you dream about? This is usually like kind of like a different. I'm very interested in this, so I usually kind of parse it out separately. But since you're bringing it up now, can you give us some examples?
Yeah, well, I'll first say that, well, I've lost 4 really significant people in my life, but I realized the first one, I was 20 and I lost a partner/boyfriend. He died in a fire, and that was the only way I got over his death was through dreams. Absolutely, it was so huge that because we had no closure, he died suddenly. I was, and we had been together for almost a year, living together and all that, and that was it, through dreams. And I found the same experience very true with my mother and my brother, who died within a year of each other, who I was extremely close to. Uh, and they often come to me together in a lot of dreams, and I'll dream about my childhood home quite a bit. I mean, quite a bit, like 4 times a year, but they're significant dreams regularly, I guess. And so, yeah, they come to me, and sometimes they're visiting and I know it's a visitation and I can say, "Oh my gosh," and I almost get lucid in the dream and I could say, "Oh, mom, good to see you," or whatever. And other times it's just like they're alive. So it's not always one way or the other. But I have friends from high school who have passed on, who I see in dreams for sure. Not nearly as much as my family, but
Your if you don't mind, can we talk about your boyfriend that died in the fire in the dreams?
uh-huh.
Um, so when you were first encountering him in this space, um, okay, was there a progression? That's what I want to get at. So, like for example, I've had a lot of close in death too. I call it the constant companion at this point.
Yeah.
Um, it was there so with my mom, there was a progression. I couldn't see her. I wasn't terribly emotional when she died. I mean, it affected me. I loved her more than anything in the world. But it was when I first started seeing her in dreams, I was too emotional and it would just end. So I'd see her from a distance. And then it started to be behind things like glass and like prison almost. Like we'd have a phone. And so I'd see her and my emotional stuff was a little bit more detached, but still too much. And then it would be like in another room and we could see each other but not talk. And eventually it came to where we were in the same room and interacting. And now it's very wonderful, actually.
Right.
So was there some sort of a progression? How did they start and where did they go?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, with my mom, that happened with the progression, like what you said, very much so. But no, with him, it was just like him literally like being next to me and saying, "I'm here. Like it's okay," like reassuring me and talking to me directly, and me being able to like hold him and tell him, that I miss him and all these things. It was pretty. There wasn't really a progression with that, but I was drinking a ton of alcohol at the time and like hanging out on his grave a lot. So who knows? I mean, it was a strange time. That was my coping. It was like, thank God for alcohol and dreaming and his grave. I don't know. That's how I got through
Well,
the first year.
oh, I mean, that's incredibly tragic. Death by
Yeah.
fire is just intense. I mean, oh my God. It's my worst nightmare personally. Um, when was he able to communicate about dying in that way?
I wish it's interesting. Every 5 years or so, I burn all of my journals, including dream journals. I always have done that, and I haven't. Yeah. So I had written everything down, and it's all gone. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure in terms of that. I mean, he died by his own hand, so you know.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not it's his own hand still
Oh
fires
yeah,
intense.
for sure.
It's oh, and by the way, I actually think that's a very magical thing to burn your stuff every so often.
Yeah, it always has felt right to do that.
Yeah. I've had 2 big fires in my life. They weren't by my hand, and I would never do it myself.
Really?
No, I could never. I mean, this was antiques and all my photos and, like, everything I loved, and it was in the end, they were gifts. These were in my life, they were 2 great gifts of release
Yeah,
from chains.
for sure.
Um, okay, that's intense. So, on the dreams with your mother, how old were you when your mother died?
It was 8 years ago, and my brother died 9 years ago tomorrow. In fact.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. Um, when this emotional aspect of this emotional interaction with your mother afterwards, were you able to ever get like clean? When I say clean is like where you're not emotional, like communication with her?
Oh yeah. Yeah, but I can't tell you how many dreams I had where we like she was in a hospital somewhere and she was still alive, and I tried to call her on a phone and couldn't call, like the numbers would mess up.
Yes.
Seriously, I've had like 100 of those.
Yes.
Yeah, but she was sick for a long time too. But it's so crazy how that works. Like I've had many more of those than the actual clear communication with her.
Yeah, my momo's been dead 20 years this year, and so it took me easily a decade when I was still emotional. Like like I mean, it's
Yeah.
still like now I'm fine with it and it's great, but it was still a decade on. I
Mm.
was longing for each encounter, and yet each one kind of wrecked me up, and it would take a day to get over even.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
so, what about your brother? Did you encounter him? Do you encounter him in this space?
I do, less frequently than my mom, but a lot of times they're together. They were really close. We were all 3 of us were like a, very close, whatever, triangle growing up. But yeah, I dream less about him, but when I do, there's also the thing of, I'm sure you've had this too with losing people where you dream that they had a different death than they did. So there's
Mhm.
a few of those for sure, numerous ones of those with him where he died of a heart attack in his sleep at the age of 29.
Oh,
Uh,
Saturn return.
yeah, yeah, very unexpected. So, but I've had many dreams about him dying in other ways, and all these. Sometimes it'll be a dream where I almost like can almost save him somehow. Like I can, and I
Mhm.
never can. But those are those kind of dreams too.
Yeah. These are, you're really bringing this subject's very important to me, and I don't get a lot of people that have a good recall of, um, the dead loved ones. We get some of it, but not a lot, and, so this is important stuff to talk about, and it's definitely important in context to Nox Mente, because ultimately where we go is, where is consciousness? Where are
Uh-huh.
we? And so that's significant. In your dreams, when it's other people, when it's not loved ones, but is there a way you can tell if they are, say, sentient in a way and not part of your psyche?
You mean like dreaming about demons or fairies?
Well, certainly demons or fairies, trapped spirits, ghostly kinds of
Oh
things.
yeah,
Give me
definitely.
some of those examples.
Yeah. So years ago, I remember one really specifically where I was outside of. I was at like a whatever. Once again, hard to describe, but it was like a antique store, and it was in a house. You know how sometimes that actually happens. So in my dream, I didn't know where I was, but I went into this antique store, and there was like a. I was looking around, and it was cool, but there was a basement. So I went down in the basement, and suddenly the dream changed. Like the quality became crystal clear. It all of a sudden had a different kind of feeling and light. All of it, the details were remarkable. And there was a man down there who was maybe 5 foot tall and like blonde hair, and he was very lavishly dressed. He had like an emerald coat that was very fancy and old style, and his eyes twinkled, and I knew he was a fairy man. I knew he was not of the human world. So I we had an encounter, and I woke up and I just felt like, God, that was strange. Oh, what the hell, That was really cool. So that was really special. Because there was some sort of romantic vibe, but nothing happened, but it was like a weird vibe, and I don't remember exactly what we said. That's one of them, and then there was another one more recently. I did a group dreaming experiment with, one of the classes that I teach. I think this was maybe 6 months ago, where we were all trying to meet in the dream realm around the full moon for a while. I think we only tried it a couple times, and then we got busy. But the first one we did, the idea was like, let's imagine all of us at like a castle ruins, like before we go to sleep, like with that intention to see each other in the dream realm. And that night I dreamt that I was in this sandstone castle, and I was walking down like a hallway, and I was with a group of people. It wasn't those people, but it was another group of people, and we came into a huge room where there was a roaring fire, and there was a woman with ram horns, and she was super spooky and just cloaked. And we had to pass around. God, what was it? I have it right in here. We sat in. There was like 14 of us, and there was I'm actually pretty sure it was all women. Now that I'm thinking about it, and even though I didn't know them in the dream, I knew them. You know how that is. But in waking life, I don't know who they were. There was one of the women was quite elderly. we had to pass this human bone around the room. Everybody had to touch it. And by the time it got to the leader, this woman with the ram's horns, it was supposed to be like charged, but we had to give it to the elderly woman first because it would become so powerful as we passed it around, it would hurt her, and so because anyway, that was potent dream. And yeah, that woman was not of this world for sure.
So this one, she actually had something and was passing it around. The first one with the sparkly eyed gent, did he have something for you? Was there, you know how the Fae usually will have something or take some?
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't looked at that dream. I have it written down somewhere, and I know there was like sparkly treasure all around because it was like all of a sudden the antiques down in the basement, it was like brass and shiny things
Yes,
everywhere. It was full of
love
treasure.
it.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah, that was cool. But I don't remember if he gave me something or if I took something. I should look back on that one. I'll have to do that.
And what kind of were these in this time? So that one, this last one was with your group about 6 months ago, you said?
Yeah,
And then the one with the sparkly eyed gent, when was that?
that was probably 5 years ago.
Okay, but these are fairly recently. Sorry, Jared, carry on.
No, the one with the woman who was creepy.
Yeah.
Did she have the hoards of treasure too?
No,
Okay.
not that I remember.
I just saw something. It's a new TV show where they encountered a dragon in human form who was hoarding treasure.
Oh,
It
right.
was an old weird woman.
Yeah, interesting.
I live for the crones, that come in as give you that image. That's why I love Baba Yaga and
Oh, yeah.
all this Hecate. Um, so in these, so these are fascinating. I love these. And you said that it's, and maybe I gathered this, I'm not sure, but you've had many. Did I hear you say that? With the Fae or these otherworldly types?
I wouldn't say many, but I have them. I have them regularly enough to recognize. Absolutely. I wouldn't say like all the time. They're pretty. I mean, I'd say probably 4 times a year.
That's pretty significant, I think.
Yeah, quarterly or something. Yeah, there was. I was just thinking of another one where there was this white Victorian house, and it was kind of up on a hill, and there were these winter trees that were all black with branches. And it was during the day, and I walked up, and there was a witch woman living there, and she looked kind of like Morticia or something. And she was really intense, and she was mean, but she had these two obsidian gifts that were really incredible. One was like an obsidian blade, and one was an obsidian stone. And I've dreamt about obsidian since then too. And but she was like really threatening and mean, but she gave them to me. And then an old woman showed up on the porch and kind of softened the blow somehow with these like red curls. She was really like kind. She had a dog. I don't know. Yeah, so I feel like that will happen sometimes where somebody just totally out of the pale comes.
I find it extremely significant that you get the treasure, you get something. So
Yeah.
we've got the darker goddess, Morticia immediately, I get the Morrigan, right? And
Yeah.
with the obsidian, very significant, and that she gave you an obsidian.
Yeah. Two pieces.
Yeah, that's significant. And did it have a shape? Did they have
Uh-huh.
shapes?
Oh yeah. I drew them.
Oh, cool. That's super cool. And then, of course, we must always fear the dark goddess and the dark fae. We need
Yeah.
respect there.
Oh yeah.
But I love the aspect you said about the more vivacious, the redhead.
Yeah. Just like a kinder like
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. Well, it was still probably her. And so that
Right.
that is that's juicy. You bring in the witchy dreams tonight, girl.
Oh, we're just getting going.
These are good. Okay,
Oh,
so
good.
I have a couple questions. I wanted to get to the life-changing one, so I'm not there yet. I want to get to so with these, oh dear. Um My flow. Okay, back to my flow. Is the thing one thing I didn't write down. I write as we go. Um, in the dreamscape, do you have encounters with the sentience of nature? So, especially since this is what you do in your waking world and excel at, and have made a career with. So, and I know you've got the book on trees, all this. What's your experience with the sentience of trees and the natural world in the dream?
Yeah, I have quite a few animal dreams and plant dreams. I definitely take them as highly significant when I do. I pay a lot of attention to what, in particular, I mean, with plants and animals, but it's funny. I probably have more animal dreams than plant dreams. You would think I would have a ton of plant dreams. I don't. And so, in terms of what you would imagine, maybe, I don't know. I feel like when I do, it's really a big deal. So recently, I've been obsessed with black maple trees and just in general, like this year, just for some reason, this fall, just noticing, they're ornamental. I don't know what their genus and species is. I don't care, but I just been obsessed with them and thinking about, planting them and having a forest of black maple trees. They're just gorgeous. They're amazing. Their leaves and the feel of them. And I love maple in general. So I named I named this place after maple mist wood, maple trees. So I
And
had a dream.
also, that's your website.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So maple's a big thing in general, but these black maples are really spooky and cool. Their leaves look like leather. So I had a dream where I was picking the black maple, and so they kind of turn scarlet or orangish as they fade. Some of the trees I've seen, which is super interesting, that they start black and then when they fall, they turn red. So in the sunlight, I was picking these black maple leaves. I was really happy. This is just the most recent one, a couple weeks ago, that I but this vampire woman was following me, not a vampire like in the cool, sexy way, but a vampire like a psychic vampire. She was a really needy older woman who was like just trying to. She just needed something really bad, and I was like, no, I need to like be with the maple tree. Like you can't whatever suck my life force away. So it was an interesting transmission. I think of those as and a lot of the magical objects that I've seen in dreams, which are so crazy. I wish I could create them, but I think of those as direct transmissions. So in some ways, it's like the black maple is like, oh, use this for psychic vampires. Bam. So that's how I think about it. And white lilies have been a big thing for me this year. So I've had a couple dreams specifically about the white lilies. One was where I gave white lilies in a mica vase to my mom in a dream, and then another one was where I used white lilies and sugar wrapped in white thread as a love charm. So that was interesting. So I pay a lot of attention when either I'm harvesting plants, and or when I notice a tree, like, oh, there was an oak tree at the beginning of blah 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 or whatever. And then also animals, they come and go, but I have a lot of owl, a lot of raven, a lot of moths, and a lot of deer over all the years, and actually a lot of coyote. So yeah, I pay a lot of attention to those.
Do you have examples of your encounters with the animals in the dreamscape that
Yeah.
just stick out? I'd love to hear some.
Oh, sure. So recently it was really cool. So I didn't even how it's like this, I'd say in general with plants and animals and with spirits in general, they choose you. You don't get to choose. It's not a self-proclaimed game. So you see what comes in your dreams, you see what comes in your waking life, you see what you're obsessed with, you see what shows up in terms of materia magica, it chooses you. So I recently did a thing, and then I'll get back to these, but I just made a notice. Started to I went through the last 3 or 4 years of dream journals. This was 6 months ago or something, and I made a dreaming grimoire. So I picked out and teased out kind of all of the direct transmissions and wrote them in kind of a formulaic way because I love doing that. I love working with what comes from my dreams. I'll talk about that in a little bit, how I do that. But anyway, I noticed a bunch of coyote stuff and I was like, whoa, crazy. Why haven't I haven't really initiated much with coyote, and coyote has shown up in my life at very poignant times. So this fall, one of the dreams I had a couple harvest dreams. One of them was that I was walking in the middle of a wheat field. I don't grow wheat. Wheat doesn't grow around here, but I was walking in the middle of this wheat field. It was like perfectly tawny, gorgeous heads of wheat, the twilight color of the sky. And there was all these people, there were dead cows that had been slaughtered in the middle of the field, and all these people were going out with kettles to take the meat, you know. So I had a big kettle and I was going to get the meat. And I came across 3 coyotes and they were eating the meat as well. And I was so struck by their beauty. They were just incredibly gorgeous. And I knew we were like dancing and sharing this meat. So that was one of them recently. And then after that, maybe a month later, a really important dream was I've been asking for dreams and asking for dreams. I needed some help with something. And so this is the dream that came. I was at my grandma's farm, of all places, back in the swampy woods where the golden light kind of hit everything in a certain way. And I was staring at this space, you know, and it was like a circle. It was like this beautiful circle that had been matted down by animals, but it was like perfect, you know, the grass kind of at the edge of this like very light colored wood in the late golden sun, late summer sun. And it was matted down. And I just was staring at it. And all of a sudden I realized when I looked in the middle of the circle, I saw 3 coyotes that they were invisible, but they like were their shape was visible, but I couldn't. Does it make sense? I could see them, but they didn't look. They looked like they were invisible, and I could see them. There were 3 coyote in there, and then on the outside of the circle was 3 deer, and it was the same thing where they blended in the background, and just their edges moved like heat waves, and it was so crazy. And I was standing there, and later, of course, I thought predator and prey, you know. But I was standing there watching this, and all of a sudden, a black horse came up with a hearse. He had one single hearse, a black, long, Victorian, fancy hearse, and the horse had no driver, and the hearse was empty, and it stood at the edge of the circle. And one of the horse somehow got spooked and went away, and that was it. But it was very powerful.
Gary, you look like you were going to say something.
I was going to say just like Predator, the movie Predator, which you probably never saw, but it was a movie in the 80s that had an alien with a cloaking suit. Best way to explain it, where you could see the outline, you could see through it, light would shine through it, but it was like a glimmer when it moved.
Like gloaming yeah.
Totally.
It's like cloaking, whatever. But I was going to say Predator, and then you're like Predator. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, funny.
Well, that's quite significant. The circle really takes that to it takes it to a very now we start talking sacred geometry and also all kinds of magical arts. So you've got them inside, and you've got the deer outside, the hearse and the horse. I mean, this is amazing imagery.
Yeah.
How long ago was this?
3 months, 2 months.
Oh, it's recent. Yeah, that's fierce. So when you come up from this experience, so something potent like that, where you're given a message, right? I mean, that's how I view these.
Yeah.
So what did you? That's you have to share personal stuff, but what did you get from that?
Well, I mean, it's one of the things that happens after I have if any significant dream that stands out from kind of the like self-reflective and like kind of combing the depths dreams or the rat dreams, like any significant dream, I chew on it for a while. Like I keep it on. I always talk about a thing with my students where there's like an inner altar where we have this place like in our psyche that we kind of put things. Maybe they're like omens and signs. Maybe they're fate encounters and strange encounters. Maybe they're dreams. Blah blah blah. So anyway, creative processes. So I put that there and I kind of work on it for a while, and then I usually create some sort of art with it or poem or writing. But that particularly, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because both of the animals I have a huge history with the coyote, which that's been talk about adversarial. That's been a relationship that I haven't embraced. But the deer show up in particular times. And they mean something really specific.
Don't coyotes also?
And then I feel like, the hearse, the avoiding disaster, avoiding death. I mean, I feel like it's a close call. And I don't mean in physical life, but there's, it's walking on the way I took that was like walking on the edge of something dangerous, but also that's, I don't know. It's also, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at it, but I definitely felt all of the symbolism there was really poignant, you know.
Isn't
Oh yeah,
there
it's potent. Sorry, Jerry.
isn't there a relationship? Is there a relationship between coyote and trickster, the trickster entity?
Oh, definitely.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the Native American
Right.
mythology, right?
One that they were contained within the circle.
No, they were in the circle, and the
The
deer
deer were
was outside.
outside.
Uh-huh.
Well, in the horse, like in traditional, like in like high spiritual movement, late 1800s, the Lima stuff, all that's happening. The horse was often associated with a couple things. Ego was one, and vanity was another. Um, and so, of course, what I love about our time is, and this is one of the reasons why we get specific with things that are personal symbols for you when for
Right.
anyone when they're little, is that it's not nothing in this world is a blanket. you
No,
know
Mhm.
so
no.
it's I think the day I liberated myself from books on dream symbolism
Yeah,
was one of the best days of my
yeah,
life. But those were early years. I was interested, and so now the horse can just mean so many things, but it's class with the hearse.
yeah.
And and it was a white horse.
No, it's black.
It was black. Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's witchy as hell.
yeah.
I won't dive more into that with you because that's all personal, it's all recent. I'm really let's say I want to spend some time with the life-changing dreams.
Uh-huh.
So when you were parsing out like the layers of dreams, that
Yeah.
was one of the layers. And so I wrote the things I definitely wanted to get to. We already got to with you, or the people dreams and the life changing ones. So could you go into that a little more?
Yeah, so those particular dreams, they have such a different, like I said, such a different quality, and like they also, like an initiation, one of the hallmarks I think of initiatory experience is that one can draw power from it for a very, very long time. Many, many years can pass, and one can still draw power from it. So these are similar. These dreams have that same quality where years can go by, and one can still remember them just like so poignantly, or whatever. It's in such a, they're epic essentially. So I'll give you one example I mean, it's hard to tell these in some ways, but I wanna give you an example because 'cause they're like, wow. Um, this one has to do, I've told this to my students, so it's like educational purposes, I feel okay about this particular one, and it was really special, and there's so much to it, but the I was pregnant with my daughter, so it was 4 years ago, and this really is cool because, it's about owls. And the day I got pregnant with her, it was a dark moon, and we have a lot of owls here, and I've had a big relationship with owls since I moved out to this place about 7 years ago. They've become really big for me, and lots of dreaming about owls. But anyway, the day I was pregnant, found out I was pregnant with her, we saw two owls in a tree, and uh, my former husband and my son and I watched them, and it was just really special. So anyway, she's our little owless. But this dream,
That was the day you found out you were pregnant?
yeah,
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
yeah, it was amazing. 2 owls in a tree, I've never seen 2 before, and it was like we
Together,
were
yeah.
literally 20 feet from them for, like, 20 minutes
Wow.
on the dark moon.
Nature
Yeah.
loves you.
What's that?
Nature loves you.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was
I think
really
she's an
special, but this,
elemental.
what's
Yeah,
that?
I said I think you're an elemental.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
you're definitely a elf.
That's a high compliment. Thank
It
you.
is indeed.
Yeah, so I had this dream in the early stages, morning sickness, feeling like crap. First few months, I had this dream, and it was unbelievable. So I was on this property, and I was walking down the driveway. In real life, there's a very long driveway through the forest. So I was walking down this driveway, but in my dream, we shared this property with a set of neighbors. So kind of in the middle of the driveway, as it is, there were these people that lived here, and it was like an older couple who were in their 70s, and they're like three sons in their 40s, and they were just very, very different than us. They trashed the place, like they were just kind of, yeah, just like garbage everywhere, didn't care, just negligent, didn't care, right? So I'm walking past the neighbors who I don't like on on this driveway that we share. And I look over and there's kind of like a hunting stand, and one of the sons, who's in his 40s, has a dead barn owl and he's cutting the wings off.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
God.
"Oh my god, oh my god." So I freaked out, my dream, and I said, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, "Oh my god." And I walked up to him and I said, "What are you doing? What are you oh my god." I was so upset, and he said, "Oh, well, this owl came and I wanted to catch it, and I'm going to take these wings and put them on the wall. This is so incredible." And he was just, and I said, "That's so fucked up." And I said, "This is so wrong. Like, something of such great beauty shouldn't be killed for its beauty. You shouldn't try to keep it or catch it. You should be happy that it graced your property and that it touched your property with its wings." And anyway, I kind of started talking to him, and then it was like I came down and I was walking down the driveway and he started following me, and all of a sudden there was like 20 people following me. I don't know who they were, and I was talking about how messed up our culture was, that this kind of thing is like we want to keep something that's so wild, and then at the end of my driveway it was all logged, like all the trees were gone. And this isn't true in real life, but in my dream it was like that. And I asked the man, I said, "Will you please take this to the local tribe and give them the owl so they can put the feathers into ceremony and dance with this owl again?" And he said that he would take it to the Squaxin Island tribe. And I was so happy, and it was like amazing. It was this amazing moment. And I was walking back to my house by myself down the driveway after like kind of this epic speech. And a woman who I don't know, who was kind of like 50s, blonde hair, came up and said to me, she just like touched my shoulder. She said, "Thank you so much." And I said, "Oh, you're welcome. I'm so glad, whatever, I inspired you." And my owl that I have a relationship with, the barred owl, not a barn owl, flew down from the trees and it touched my shoulder with its wings, and two feathers fell off. And I gave the feathers to this woman. And that was it.
That's incredible.
It was incredible. I mean, it was so clear, so cohesive, such a narrative. Everything was just incredibly powerful. Yeah.
With these dreams too. I just love. Thank you for sharing these dreams. I'm very grateful about this. Some people don't have dreams. I'm glad to talk philosophy of dreams all day. Um, these dreams feel really lucid. When you're telling them, I'm feeling a high degree of lucidity hearing them. So so for that dream, where were you in the lucid aspect? How real did it feel?
Well, there was it's interesting with lucid dreaming. There was a period, maybe 10 years ago, I went through a bunch of lucid dreaming. This wasn't a lucid dream. I mean, it felt extremely real in terms of its effect on me. It felt like it totally happened. But in terms of knowing, like, I know I'm dreaming and I'm going to do something, there was none of that. It wasn't like lucid like that.
Okay, so just on that is a little side note to this. What's your experience with lucidity within the dream space? You
Well,
said
like I
not
said,
very much earlier.
what's that?
You said not much earlier that it.
Yeah. So being lucid, like I said earlier, about 10 years ago, I went through a big phase for a number of months where I was having lucid dreams all the time. And since then, not a lot, not very often now, but I do a lot of conscious dreaming or trance work very regularly, which feels extremely much. It's the same as lucid dreams. It's exactly the same as lucid dreaming. But in terms of my night dreams, hardly ever now. I don't have a lot of lucidity in terms of just being like, whoa, this is a dream. Like, I have some control. I'm gonna do something.
When you're so let's ruminate here for a minute. So in these dreams, when you were having just any dream, but just in general, the lucid dreams, um, what were the what kind of things can you derive from them? Like what were triggers to get you lucid? Like, oh, I'm dreaming. Did, like just any details that stick out that may help other people.
Well, gosh, I wish I could remember. It's been a long time. I don't remember. I wanted to, well, one thing was I remember wanting to have lucid dreams. So I think there was some sort of practice around, I forget what it was. Maybe it was a phrase before falling asleep. I forget what it was. There was a practice around it that I was doing, or an object that I was trying to see in my dreams that would remind me, something like that. But I wish I could remember. It's just been a long time, so I'm not sure.
When you were let me walk with you on this for a minute. So in the dreams when you became lucid, that like moment of lucidity, um where you're like, I know I'm dreaming, was at any point did the idea that you were dreaming within awake within the dream ever wake you up? Like the moment you realize you're awake in the dream, it's a common experience for me, at least. I hear it from other people, but I only know my experience, where sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm awake, or and so at that point sometimes I'll either get pinpoint um visual perception where I have to just hone in on one thing, like
Uh,
the road or a lamp or something to get stability so I can expand it. Or sometimes just knowing the idea of I'm awake within the dream somehow triggers me out of it, which is weird.
yeah, I mean, I remember having like definitely a feeling of time pressure, like knowing, like all of a sudden when you realize you're dreaming, it's not going to last that long. So there's like this intensity of like, oh my God, I have to like, who do I want to see or what do I want to do? Like, I have to do that because there's not enough time. There's not very much time. I'll wake up soon for sure. I definitely remember that.
Yeah, it's I always want to hold on to it, and
Yeah.
and it's like anything. It's a real lesson in life. It's like the more you want to hold on to it, the less you have it. So,
Yeah.
you
Oh, for
know.
sure. But in some ways,
um,
I've thought about this too, though. In some ways, I'm glad I don't have a lot of lucid dreams anymore because it's like being awake. I'm already awake during the day. I like being in a dream world at night where I'm not conscious, In some ways, I actually like that
What?
because you never know what's going to happen. What's that?
No, I was going to ask what experience you've had or anything like astral travel or projection, if anything.
I guess in the way that it's commonly defined in terms of leaving one's body, uh, I never felt like I had much experience like when I was younger, a child doing that. Like some people say that they could float up and turn back around and see their own body, whatever. I didn't have that. But the conscious dreaming or the trance work that I do is definitely that. I mean, you're going to all sorts of places, to the dreamscape, also to this world. And I do that. I've done that for the last decade, and I think that has made a huge impact on my dream life because it trains that part of the brain.
Right. Well, I was really curious. I was going to ask a follow up to that. How different is that from a regular lucid dream? And
It's
why?
so
Are,
what's that?
and why are they different? I mean, what? Well, you
Right.
said you felt rushed in a lucid dream once you realize you're dreaming. Do you have that same sensation when you're doing the remote
Yes.
work?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. I never even thought about that. Yeah, so what it is like I'd say it's more intense with lucid night dreaming, but in terms of the time pressure, but there still is that time pressure to with the trance work. It's so similar to lucid dreaming where it's like you have some control, but ultimately you're not in control at all and you're not choosing what is coming to you. I always think of it like water bubbling up from a brook, like that kind of a thing. Like you don't get to choose who comes or the landscape or how it works, and you just have to kind of make these instant decisions. There is some pressure behind it because there's a sense of like, you go with some sort of intention, like, oh, I want to visit with the spirit of the yew tree and like get a direct transmission about this ancestor work I'm doing. I'm just using that as an example, right? So there is a sense of like things unraveling. So when you have something that you're kind of working with that's very tangible, there's a knowing that it won't last. Like it's similar to dreaming.
I totally get it. You're saying you build this construct and now it's going to dissipate while you work with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so like keeping the focus and like trying to it's a muscle to exercise. It's
Mhm.
not a given. So you have to it's like with dreaming too. And I think with people that do a lot of lucid dreaming,
Mhm.
I'm sure because I remember at the time it was like working this muscle.
It's,
Feels really similar.
I just had a flash of people spinning plates, so it's like a spinning plates thing on Bozo. You know, you got 10 plates going, you got to keep them all spinning at
Oh,
once.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
really is.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's really interesting and you can exert some control, but ultimately you're not in control.
Right. So
So that's fascinating.
what? So when you do this trans work, this I'm just talking out my ass, really. It seems like you go to a central place and pull people in, or people, entities, whatever, are meet there. You can't really go. I'm asking, can you really go like to their house and work with them, or do you work with people or spirits, or with plants mostly?
Oh, everything.
Yeah.
But in terms of going to people's house, you mean like go visit your grandma at her
No,
house?
no, like astrally or remote,
Oh
lucidly,
yeah.
how? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So,
you can go to people's house.
no, I know, I know. I'm saying
Oh.
is, do you think that space that's created for that is an overlay? Is it something separate? Is it
Oh.
part of consciousness? What is that arena?
The invisible realm, what is it?
Yeah, pretty much. What what do you think it is?
I think it's really similar to the dream world. I think it's very similar. So in terms of I've never thought about defining it. Uh because it seems like in my experience from doing it, anything goes. I mean,
Mhm.
there's no parameters. So it's like it can be the weirdest shit, just like night dreams that you can
Right,
ever even think of, or that you can't actually think of it till you do it. There's no forethought at all. Or it can be something that seems kind of lame and boring. I mean, it's got similar qualities. So I don't know what is it in terms of consciousness. There's an aspect like of being conscious that's totally necessary,
right.
but it's not. It's something
Yeah,
else.
I've been
It's
thinking about.
tapping in.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, I was gonna say, and some of the things I wonder how much like psychic DNA we have access to sometimes with work like that. Even with dreaming, night dreaming, where people, if you, I study molecular biology for a while, and I think we have what I might be getting the percentage wrong because it's been a long time, but I think people say we have 80% junk DNA. So I always thought
Mm,
that was a total joke. It's just like because we don't know how it's used. But
yeah,
I
there's
really wonder about how much ancestral DNA and like psychic imprinting that we have from our ancestors. It makes me wonder, can we see what they saw, or can we experience what they experienced? You know what I mean? Like the
right.
landscapes or interactions or this or that. So I sometimes wonder if some of the dream realm comes from those kind of things, from our DNA, which sounds bizarre, but I don't know.
No, it's not bizarre at all. I mean, you're really talking about DNA as a storage device. So is it
Absolutely.
storing these things, or is it storing links to the consciousness units that were those entities, your ancestors? That's,
You never
you
know.
never know, really. Right, right, right. I've just had this
We don't know
really,
how protein synthesis affects us. We don't. Mhm.
we don't even understand how it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask some molecular biology. I forgot my question, but the one thing I was going to say, I just forgot that now. Awesome. All right, Nish, it's all you.
Jerry, you're hilarious.
No, I just had she made me think of another question. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'll think of it.
Well, one of the things that Jerry usually asks is and it's kind of, it relates to this, and you may have when I was on my little pee break. Um, is do you get downloads within your dream?
But that's a good question.
So in within dreaming, do you get information that like do you get
Yeah,
information that
she
you
does. She got those magic tools. She said that one time. She gets all kinds of
Oh yeah.
information.
I do.
right, but so like
Transmission. Yeah, download.
yes,
Yep.
yeah. Well, that
Yep.
kind of goes in with stored genetic memory, which is tied into crystalline stuff and cubic stuff, and which is tied into animals. Do you remember, Jer?
Just remember my question. Oh, so
The floor is yours.
thank you. Besides contacting plant spirits and animal spirits, have you contacted other entity spirits, non-human,
Well, we talked
or
about
entities? Did I miss
The
it? Did I
Fae.
miss that part? Not the Fae. I'm talking like aliens.
Oh, okay. I
So
don't think
that
I've had
starts with how do you
Not that
which
they're necessarily different.
right. Not that they're necessarily different. Not specifically. I don't have it. Not knock on wood, and I don't have alien dreams
Hmm.
or apocalyptic dreams like a lot of folks. I don't
And
have
you've never been abducted, quote unquote abducted.
no.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that you have to be near cell towers to have that happen, or some kind of, radio thing. I don't know.
What? Did I have to be near what?
Like if you grow up in the country, you probably don't have that happen to you. But I don't know.
Oh,
I remember.
right.
I just remember my other question. I was just kind of ad-libbing there. My other question was, are you Rh negative? Blood type.
I'm O positive.
Okay.
I don't know. I
That's
don't
not.
know.
That's not. Well, if you're positive, you're not negative.
Right. Then no. Right.
There seems
So,
to be a high correlation of Rh negative people with a high psychic abilities.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
yeah, oh
RH
yeah,
negative.
you've got psychic hands. I can tell. You've got I read hands. Curology. Yeah,
Hmm.
your fingertips are very. Yeah, girl. So it's there. Um, so in all of this kind of this mid territory where we are, what do you think about the role of dreams as they relate to this experience of waking life that seems to take precedence?
Yeah. So with dreams, it's one of the reasons they're so important to me. I highly value them, and I absolutely have like more. So everybody has, kind of signs and auguries and omens that they may follow, whether we admit it or not, or even know it or not. It's hardwired in us to do such things. So for me, there's a lot of things I consider, but dreams are huge. So basically, I listen to them way more, maybe even more than I should, and worry about them and think about them. So they influence my waking life in that way. For example, I always think the very first dream I have about somebody is very telling. Always, like the very first one. I pay a lot of attention to the first dream so and so shows up in for me. First one, it's almost like it tells me something. I've just learned that over the years. I don't know why. And I've had a number of prophetic dreams, like very specifically the night before my mother died. A bunch of weird prophetic dreams over the years, and then also the direct transmissions that you're talking about, or the downloads. I work with that material in the magic work I do for sure. I do art around it, and or writing, and or altars, and or whatever, some sort of spell work, ritual stuff around it, because it's there for a reason, not just to be discarded.
Can you give us so for example, of course I love the prophetic stuff. Um, and for me, every significant person so far that's died has come to me. I've known beforehand, even if they were dying, say they had a cancer or something. I knew like they were right there at the edge. And like this last year, my friend Tammy, lifelong friend, she came as the wind, literally as the wind, and the wind that was escaped out of a vehicle with open doors. It was like she was free, and then there were cockroaches coming out of the engine. She had brain cancer.
uh
And so it was also clear to me this was Tammy, as opposed to literal her visage.
right.
The But with my Momo, as you already know, she came as herself at the age she died, which is now my age, and then progressively got younger and more into the beautiful mother I remember, who was just the goddess to me. So the sun shone she was the sun. So give us an example of maybe the prophetic dream you had with your mother. That's one of my wolves. I have two wolves barking
Wolves
in
for
the
real?
background. Yeah, I do. They're high content,
Oh, cool.
but they're long time bred, so they're not F1s or 2s.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Are those like tornado forces? F1, F2?
Well, it's just the closer to being wild. So mine has
Yeah.
come from like
I
being
remember
bred.
my other question now, finally.
Oh,
I'd asked about astral travel. Do you have any experience with like the astral plane itself? And have you encountered any of the alleged beasties that live there, the vampiric and parasitic entities and whatnot?
I'm sure I have. I never frame it as the astral explain. It's
Right, I know it's kind of difficult to put it that way.
like semantics,
Yeah.
really.
Your lucid dreamscape.
Dreamscape. Yes. Vampires?
Yeah, the psychic vampire types, the energy suckers.
Oh yeah. And demons and fucking scary things that I have no idea, but I always say that intuitively when you encounter, see, I'm trying to think of a recent nightmare. I had a really crazy one after my daughter was really sick recently, a couple months ago, and but it wasn't an entity. Huh.
Could you share that with us, though,
The
if you don't mind?
nightmare?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's doing fine. She's my little 4-year-old, but she had just gotten over it. She was really sick in the summer, like in real life, really bad. And it was scary. Neither one of my children have ever been that sick. So I was with her and we were going on a walk at this place in my dream that we had been to many times. In real life, I've never been there. It was like almost like the coasts of Cornwall, just some beautiful like cliff on the ocean, epic, gorgeous site, like that had a path somehow on these cliffs, right? So you had to enter and pay a small fee, like $5, through a covered bridge to walk over. And it was a place in my dream we'd been at many times. So we walked in, we were enjoying the view, and we kept walking, and we came across it was just her and I, and we came across these upside down stumps, like huge, big stumps with roots up in the air, like upside down on the trail, two of them. It was very alarming. And I was like, that makes no sense. That's so out of sorts. Like, what is that? So we kept walking and we came across a third one, and I was just like, it was an eerie, unsettling feeling that I felt in the dream. And I knew we needed to go home. And on our way walking back out through the covered bridge, we saw a small navy blue, like child size shoe, a wool shoe that had flowers embroidered on it, just one. And for whatever reason, in my dream, that meant that we were being watched and stalked by someone who was watching us. And I got super freaked out. So we went back to my whatever house in my dream, which was like some weird condo somewhere. And my son was there, and I said, I need to make a fire. You need to and I gotta lock the door. You gotta watch over your sister. Someone's watching us. And it was just super freaky. It was really, really intense, like gravity to that.
Where was that place at?
In my dream, it was just out here, out in the Pacific Northwest somewhere.
Oh, I thought you said it was near Cornwall.
Well, that's what it reminded me of looking at it. It was like so beautiful. It looked like these sea cliffs and something I've never seen.
That sounds like Tintagel Castle.
Yeah, it definitely that's what it looked like. It was so cool.
Okay.
But yeah, that was a recent nightmare that was super scary.
Yeah, those things they intrigue me the most, I think. I guess of course they're going to when they whip up the emotions.
Yeah.
And then on that I wanted to get back to the premonition of your mother's death.
Yeah, for me, I will share that dream. So it was the night before she died. She had been in and out of the hospital and was very sick, but she was at home in real life. Like she was at home and doing pretty good, whatever that meant. And in my dream, we were at my childhood home. We were standing in the foyer and it was dark outside. And it was like the door was ajar. The front door was ajar and it was very cold. And she was sorting through this box of furs, like fucking fur hats and fur collars. And I was like, Mom, what are you doing? I walked up to her and I said, You got to close the door. You got to take care of yourself. What are you doing? Furs, what are you doing? She's like, Oh, I'm cold. I said, I know you are, but shut the door and lock it. It's not safe out there. And right away, it felt very scary. The lighting was all messed up. It was totally weird and cold. So we shut the door and locked the door. We walked around the corner. And in this dream, it looked identical to my family home as a child, the one I've spent the most time in. And so we walked around the corner where in real life and in the dream, there was also the door that went to the garage. It's like a little, there's no glass on it. It's just a utility door that goes into the garage, right? And so we're standing there, we're standing in front of that door, and all of a sudden something tries to open it. And both of us, my mom and I, grab the handle and the doorknob and we're pulling for life. Like we're just holding on, and it's trying to open it, and it's trying and it's trying. And I knew death was coming for her. It was super intense.
That gave me the chills. It's, I mean, really significant imagery.
Yeah.
It's, and that's another thing. Just these, the details of your imagery really answer my early question anyway about how the dreamscape is. I mean, you have the symbolic, your relationship with the symbolic world is deep. You definitely seem very right brained to me.
Yeah.
So, okay, so to get to this point, I can't believe the time. Oh my God.
Yeah. That
I
just
could,
flew by.
I know. Let me wrap up this so we can get to questions. I
Sure.
could talk to you forever.
Okay.
Okay, so what's your idea of death? And 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 so as it's in context to all these states of consciousness that we can put our finger on, memories, dreams, active imagination, meditation, all these things that are states of consciousness we go in and out of. And
Uh-huh.
so, what is death and how is it different from this?
Well, the more I don't contemplate death very often at all. I stopped doing that a long time ago. It's like it's something we can't know and we're not supposed to know. That's how I really deeply truly feel. Um, so I don't actually spend a lot of time because soon enough I'll know. So that's I don't know. I when I think about what is it in terms of is the question like do we carry this consciousness into death that we have now? Like all of these relationships, do we carry them into death?
Well, what is the okay? So, what is the state of consciousness that is death? How does it differ from your life as that you're living now? And I say that in context to all of this because you have a dream life that you live in,
Right.
that you're living that is separate really from your persona and your ego. And I mean, you may be in your dreams as Corinne, but you're also not, right?
Yeah.
Um, so how does death tie into all of this? What's that? Is it a state of consciousness? Is it a shift of, is it just a shift to the left? Is it a push to the membrane? Is it just like birth? Uh, Um,
I have no fucking clue.
well, no one does. That's why I like, the ponder. That's why the ponder is so great,
Sure.
and why it's so juicy to hear
Yeah.
um, people's
Right.
ideas of it.
Yeah.
Well, when you think of death,
Uh-huh.
what are the first things that come to mind? Just like word association.
When I think of my own death, you mean my death?
Or just okay, so death in general.
'Cause I spend a lot of time. I mean, I spend a lot of time with death in certain ways. I'm super interested in the dead and funerary plants and practices and grieving rites and all these things. But when I think of death in general,
Yeah.
well, I mean, transformation is the hugest thing.
Do we maintain so I have this sense, okay, so for me, I don't think we die. And I think a lot of this experience we have in waking life has a lot to do with the greater dreaming that's going on. Like maybe the earth dreaming, the Sophia
Uh-huh.
stuff rings true to me. Or if you're scanning, the new stuff. So and I think for me, it's a 0 point game. Birth and death are the same point. So people have taken the circle and they've made a line out of it. And here's this point, and here's that point. But birth and death seem very much the same to me, very much the same process. They both require massive amounts of energy to happen, and both are pushing through a membrane of some sort, and so they're like it's really circled, it's at the same point. And it's just the way I've always thought about it. It makes sense to me, it feels right, it ties in with the way I walk my life, and my which includes my dream experience. So, but at the same time, people die and I don't have access to them, as you know, right? We have dreams and memories to access them, and and remembrances and all that, but there's definitely like you can't call your mom up, right?
You kind of can.
Well, you can, but you know what I'm talking about
Yeah,
physically. I can't
yeah,
go and
right.
give my mom a hug in person, like
Yeah,
in this experience.
right.
But I
Right.
do know that I do know from that relationship, it's evolved, and I still have her.
Right.
Um, so that's why I feel there's no death, but the process of dying is very significant, like the process of birthing. And so I just wondering on just your general thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think of death, and I could see what you're saying about pushing through the membrane makes a lot of sense with both birth and death, but I feel like they're really different. I've given birth twice, and that I mean, I don't know. There's the I think I see the similarities though, but maybe the perspective shift, like being I don't know. It's really interesting to think about what. Okay, so another thing with both of them that they have in common though is like this human experience that is like unbelievably uh part of our like earthly life, you know? So there's just like the grief of losing somebody really close. I always like to think that we're very evolved to do that because we are, you know, it's not we don't have to be taught even in some ways. It's in us. So I could see some similarities there. I guess I think about them really differently. I don't know why, but in my experience with them. So yeah, I don't know how to answer the question really. I don't ponder it a whole lot in that way. I surround myself with it in certain ways. I like the mystery aspect of it because and I also like that I can't find words for it, you know, because it's
I like that too. It is the veil, and we don't see through it until we do, until it's lifted.
absolutely right.
It
Right.
it strikes me though, it does strike me like, so this may sound funny, but I don't know where I stand in reincarnation. And yet I believe we are eternal. And remember, I wasn't raised Christian or anything, so I don't have any of
Right.
that baggage, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but I have a sense that we are actually immortal in this way, energetically. You can Where does the energy go? Somewhere, and the amount of energy it takes to die, having been around people that died real close, been in its presence many
Right.
times, it's significant, it's intense, it's really
Oh
intense.
yeah.
And so there's something that happens. I mean, it's like I said this, I think, on the last show, it's like a supernova. And so yeah, so I'm just always grasping. I have another question though that I want to ask before I give you to the chat. Water, deep water, and things in the deep water. In even This doesn't even have to include dreaming. Dreaming is good though, but what are your thoughts on things in the deep water? So water fae, water beings, the deep depths that we don't know about.
Well, growing up on the lakes, I definitely feel a lot of supernatural stuff around lakes in particular because and creeks, but lakes, like the spirits of you know of the lakes, like I really resonate with that. Water's really dangerous. Deep water is really, really dangerous. It's not a place that we should go, right? I mean, like physically. So there's something, it's so interesting that it's so intriguing to many, not to me. I don't want to go deep in the water ever. I
Oh,
don't
me
like deep.
either.
Yeah,
No, no, no.
no. Like oh, I can be on boats as long as I can see the shore. If I can't see the shore, forget it.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, it's extremely mysterious. You know, it's another world. It's another world that we don't belong in. Similar to like deep into caves. I'm not really into going into the earth into caves, not very far. It's just like forget it.
The oceans are the least explored. We've explored more space than the oceans.
Wow, really?
Allegedly. Allegedly.
That yeah, it's very inhospitable to life for
Yeah.
humans life for human life.
And humans have never been below 8, I believe it's 8 kilometers down. We can't get down any further. We can't drill.
Right.
It's too hot. So.
There are mysteries there. There are
I'll never forget.
mysteries.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll
that
never
turtle,
forget
man. It's a turtle.
when I was in grade school. You know, we took like a field trip, and this was in Illinois. I lived in Illinois for
Brookfield Zoo.
2 months or 2 years for 200, yeah, crazy years. But no, we went to this like factory that mined mica, and we went way down in the earth to see the mica, and it was so scary. I'll never forget. We went way down. We took this big elevator down into the earth. And we walked around these caverns with like the glimmering walls. It was so crazy. I was like, we do not belong here.
Yeah,
It was such a visceral feeling of like survival, really, right?
Yeah, right. It's like I'm the same way. I cannot go in caves like that. I see people doing spelunking. I have nightmares about being trapped in those kind of situations and underwater too.
Totally.
Like deep underwater has really always bothered me as
Yeah.
well. So it's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same here. Caving, like just any enclosed space. Now, I like to sleep in enclosed spaces, but the idea of not being able to actually move much or creeping through is, oh my goodness.
I'm the same. Yeah, I don't get claustrophobic generally, but like when it's actually like that, forget it.
Yeah, I'm not a worm. Okay, so do you have questions,
I
Jerry?
have one question from Oswald. He asked, you're from Holland, Michigan. He saw on your page and went to Evergreen State. He's also from West Michigan. He's wondering what you think of the Calvinist rules there, I think on Evergreen Street.
On what? The Calvinist rules what?
It says the Calvinist rules there / Evergreen Street.
I don't understand the question exactly.
Nor do I.
So Oswald is from Holland too?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Hi, Oswald. I'm not in the chat, people.
Is it a big Calvinist area there?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I wasn't exposed to that.
Oh, okay. That could be
That's
explain
funny,
why you
though.
don't.
I love hearing that he's from Holland.
So bizarre.
Right? I mean, it's such a small place.
It is.
Which reminds me of another question I had. While you were writing your books, did you have any interesting synchronicities in relation to the story of your book or what you were writing about?
Oh yeah.
Or yeah. Was it helpful? I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, dreaming. I mean, in particular with Plants of the Devil, which because that was a bit. It wasn't so encyclopedic as Under the Witching Tree or Under the Bramble Arch, which Under the Bramble Arch just was finished literally last week, so it should be out pretty soon for pre-order. But those are just the process was really different. So yeah, there was a lot of strange synchronicities with the book, especially with Plants of the Devil, as it was.
Very cool.
So yeah, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate that when that happens.
Yeah, I think everyone does.
Yeah.
Everyone usually has it happen to them, and it's just interesting to hear the different aspects of it. And document them, of course.
Yeah, I don't remember offhand, but I know that was a big time for dreaming.
Yeah. Oswald left chat, so screw him.
Oh, he did? I highly recommend that people check your books out. You're amazing. I love you.
Oh,
and I really, I wanted to. I'm so close to you. There's no reason why I can't get over there. Yeah, the fact that your books are amazing, and you're in amazing company with your publisher. So I just check out her books. You just won't be disappointed. They're so good. But that's all I have for this. And this is usually when we ask if you tell us about what's going on.
Anything you want to plug?
No, just the upcoming book will be exciting to see when that all comes together. It should be like right around Christmas time or early January when that comes out for pre-order. I'm really happy that that's done. It's going to be a beautiful companion volume to Under the Witching Tree. So it's 20 wild plants, and Under the Witching Tree is 20 wild trees or 20 trees. So it's kind of like the wild plants are the plants of the wayside for Under the Bramble Arch. So I'm excited about that. Really, really wanted to get that done, and yeah, it's a really busy time for teaching and writing. So I feel honored and blessed to be able to do it.
Right. Well, I put links to all your books and your website and everything in the description of the video. And they're also in the show notes on our Discord server, which you're welcome to join, by the way.
Cool, yeah.
And
Miss Internet.
yeah, I know. I was just thinking that, like, she'll never be on.
Well, I have to get on email and Facebook and stuff for my work, so I do get on
Yeah,
for
but
sure.
you don't want to get on and chat to people.
What's that?
You don't want to get online and chat with people.
Oh, right. No,
Mm.
definitely don't.
All right. Well, that's it. That's it from me.
So
That's from
this
Nish.
was, yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
I feel honored that you took the time out. I know you're busy,
Mhm.
and I just have been wanting to have this chat with you. And thank you,
That's very
Corinne.
much so.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me. I feel really blessed and definitely honored to be asked, and that you guys are included me. So I was just, yeah, it's been great. It flew by. I wish we had
I
4
can't
more hours
believe
like
it.
you
I
were
could
saying.
still be talking with you. You brought, I gotta tell you that, I mean, you really brought some intense content here. That, like I said, some people don't have dreams and we just talk about the philosophy. You brought really intense dream imagery and symbols to the table tonight that, I took lots of notes, and I have lots of follow up at some point. I'll bug you.
Awesome. Yeah.
I'll hassle you.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's really really important. So I love being able to talk about it and share some things, and it's really cool to have folks like yourselves that are thinking about these things and asking these questions. So thank you.
Somebody's got to
En-
do it.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the Samhain season, and
Yes,
I hope
definitely.
you'll find you warm and happy and all that.
And the harvest.
Thank you. You folks as well.
Right.
Thank you,
Well,
Corinne.
thank everyone who's listening. Thanks, people in chat. Be sure to tune in next week when our guest is going to be Robert Bonomo. It's going to be an early show because he lives somewhere weird like Malta. I forget where. Maybe it's France. I don't remember. It's going to be
Oh, I
early.
didn't know
It's like
that.
4 or 5 o'clock. So
For
check.
your time, Jerry?
Yeah, for my time, 4 Eastern. So check the show. I put it out today,
Okay.
and that's all I got. Have a great night,
Goodbye,
everyone.
everyone.
Take care.
Good night.